When we left off, we were talking about using the if and else structure in order to have a two-part decision-making process, which is to say that we have some condition. If that condition is true, we do one thing. If the condition is false, we do another thing. Suppose, though, that we want to select between multiple options. That is to say that we want to select between a whole bunch of different things, right? So let's say maybe we have a menu or an option menu or something like that. If we have something like that, we can put together the if and the else statement to create what we call an else if. Right. So if the first option isn't true, if the first condition isn't true, we then go to the second one, then to the third one, then to the fourth one, and so on until we find one that works. Okay. And what that sort of looks like is this, right? So if your first condition is true, we do whatever option 1 is. Else if, we check to see if our second condition is true. This is our else, right? So the else attaches to that first if statement. So if the first condition is false, we go to the else. And then under that else, we just check another if. If our second condition is true, we do option 2. And from that, if neither of those are true, we do option 3. And so the way this works in terms of the execution, so the first thing that we'll do is we go sort of top to bottom. We check that very top if statement. If it's false, we go to the second one. And if that one's false, we go to the third one. Now let's say if this if condition is true, though, then what we do is we go all the way down here, and then we skip down to the very, very, very end of this if block, right? Because everything else in here is actually subservient to this next else. So that's the cool thing about the if-else statement. Instead of having to check all of these things, we instead swoop down all the way to the very end, which is kind of useful. Okay, now when you're building if-else blocks or if-else if and else blocks, the really important thing to remember is that you're only checking one thing at a time. So even if you have lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of things that you want to check, with this if-else block, remember that we're setting up sort of a series of alternatives. We're setting up some number of branches, and we have to pick one of those branches, which means that we need to make sure that we're separating all of our decision making. I'm going to show you real fast what this looks like in terms of code. Right? So let's say that we have a menu. This is just a real quick demo. Import the scanner, create a public class, public static void main. We'll make a scanner, do a quick output. We're going to just print out a menu. Something to the effect of maybe like maybe a drink order, or a food order, right? You can go system.out.println. What would you like? And then from here, we can do one print statement. We can do a whole bunch of print statements. I'll show you that looks like system.println 1 water. We'll make a new line. 2 juice. We'll make a new line. 3 milk. We'll make a new line, and then 4 coffee. It helps to capitalize correctly. Okay, so when we print this out, this is just going to give us a numeric list, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. And so tell the user to give us a drink order. We collect that as an integer, and then maybe, just maybe, we check to see if that's right. Okay, now before what we might do is we could, if we wanted to, we could set up an if block for each of these. So one is water. So if, I'll call this choice. So if our choice is 1, system.out.println, you got water. Close that out. And then if our choice is 2, system.out.println, you got juice. Close that out. And then if our choice is 3, and you might be thinking to yourself, gosh, that looks like a lot of typing for not much. This is where things like the switch statement come in. This is also where we acknowledge, quite frankly, that programming sometimes involves lots of typing that feels redundant. And there are ways that we can move around this. There are lots and lots and lots of ways that we can move around this using more advanced data structures. Right now, though, we just have to do a lot of the grunt work. Okay, and so we have here these 4 discrete if statements, right? So if our choice is 1, you got water. If the choice is 2, we got juice. If the choice is 3, we have milk. If the choice is 4, we have coffee. But because these are 4 separate if statements, I mean, the only thing that really links them together is sort of our knowledge that they're all asking sort of about the same thing. That's the only thing that really links them together. Otherwise, these are, as far as the program is concerned, completely and totally separate. If we were to put an else statement here right after this if, that else statement would say something to the effect of you didn't get water. And then this else statement would be something to the effect of you didn't get juice. And then this else statement would be something to the effect of you didn't get milk, you didn't get coffee. And we don't have any way yet of linking these together or of making sure that there is some way of telling the user that they didn't input a 1, 2, 3, or 4. I mean, we could check for everything, but it'd be awfully obnoxious, I think, to check to see if the user inputted a 0 or below or a 5 or above, doing it one at a time. We can do that with ranges, but that also makes our program a little bit more fragile, a little harder to work with. And so what we're going to do, ultimately, is is link these together, right? And when we link these together, just going to make sort of this big if statement tree, and I'm just going to join this using Shift J. There you go. That'll be a little faster. And if you want to, even, we can move all these down to their own lines for a little bit of readability. Okay, now the cool thing that's going to happen here, we're going to check to see if if the option that the user puts in is 1. And if it isn't, we check to see if it's 2, we check to see if it's 3, we check to see if it's 4, then we leave. Now let's say the user inputs a 2. We check to see if it's 1. It's not, so then we check to see if it's 2. And with that you got juice, then we swoop down all the way to the very end after this else statement. That's how we swoop down there. And what that ends up doing is it lets us bypass a lot of this evaluation that we otherwise would have to do. And also, because all of these are linked together with the else statement, we've effectively linked all of this. You put it all together, it's one big choice, right? So there are 5 possible options. We have a 1, 2, 3, 4, or everything else. So there are 5 possible branches that we can go out here. Then we'll let's look at this in action. Let's look at this in action. Okay, so save and quit. We compile everything. We have an unclosed string literal. Okay, so this is an error that we see here. And it happens on line 11, where you have this opening quotation marks, but there's no closing quotation marks over here. So we'll just fix this real fast. Head up to line 11, and just close that out. Then we can do a real quick scan to make sure that nothing else is awry. And I think we're good. Let's try that again. Okay, so we're good here. Alright, so with this, what would we like? Water, juice, milk, or coffee? And if we give it a 1, it should say we got water. We can run this again. If we give it a 2, it should say we got juice. A 3 should say we've got milk. And a 4 should say we got coffee. If we input, say, a 0, we have an invalid choice. If we input, say, 93, also an invalid choice. If we were to input a 01, or a 02 in this case, but this is going to happen. This is the interesting part. What Java is going to do is it's going to look at this and it's going to say, oh yeah, that's a number. That's totally a number. And it's just going to get rid of that leading 0 when we do the output, and thus we'll get juice. So that's the else if statement. So we use those to link together choices. Right? And the reason that we know to use an else-if statement instead of a whole bunch of discrete, separate else statements or if statements here is because we know that the user is only going to pick one of these things at a time. Like maybe they order multiple drinks, and that's fine, but they're only going to pick one of these things at a time, which is to say that all of these are options for the same decision. Whereas if there are options for separate decisions, if these were separate things, then that would be totally inappropriate. It would be inappropriate, for example, for us to have like the give me your drink order, and then if it's not one, else if sandwich order equals, Reuben or something like that. That would be inappropriate because we're looking at different things. In this case, though, we're looking at all of these are options for the same thing. When we come back, we're going to look at nested if statements, which are ways for us to test more than one thing at once. And then after that, we'll do some quick look at Boolean flags, and then we'll wrap up for the day. See you in a second.